Hey, what's up, guys? We're back again with an unbelievably powerful gambit that can be used against both the French and the Sicilian defenses. With this, you will be basically killing two birds with one pawn. When playing against the French, you will sacrifice your b-pawn on the fourth move. If your opponent takes the bait, you will achieve central dominance with your two pawns in the center. If they decline, they will have to navigate through a storm of traps. On top of that, you can play this against almost all the Sicilian variations. In fact, Black's main third options, knight c6, d6, and e6 will all get answered with the same b4 move. So without further ado, let's take a look at some lines.
Ready, fight!
Instead of going for boring man lines, we will begin the game like this. The c5 is to be expected to take control of some important squares in the center. You will contest the control by giving your b-pawn. A black is best advised to take, but some players are for some reason afraid to do it. One of the worst ways of declining the pawn is to simply bring the knight out to c6, totally ignoring our pawn offer. Your opponent's is like, it's not checkers. No need to grab all your pawns to win the game. But this move is inaccurate, and here is why. After taking on c5, you will build a strong central pawn chain which cannot be challenged by any black c-pawn. There's a well-known trap in this position called the Greek gift. If your opponent is not aware of it and castles, enjoy, you've already won the game. You sacrifice the bishop on h7, and after black takes it, the game won't last for very long. Not convinced? Let's analyze each king move. King h8 is a checkmate in 2. Easy. If king h6, black has to say goodbye to his queen after knight e6 check. After king g8, we unsurprisingly play queen h5. Black's only surviving attempt is rook e8, creating some breathing room for the king. Queen h7 check is our answer, followed by the silent killer move bishop a3, pinning the knight and not allow it to block a future check by the queen. Checkmate will follow shortly. After king g6, the h-pawn enters the hunting ground, with again a winning position for us. Black must move his h-pawn before castling. We move our knight to a3 with the goal of reaching the d6 square. Black has to prevent it with a6, then our knight joins the center instead. Later, we want to involve our queen in the upcoming kingside attack. Meanwhile, black's counterplay is nowhere to be seen. b6 looks like a solid attempt to avoid any complication, but in reality, it makes your life really easy. You respond with the calm c3. The bishop to a6 would be a strategically desirable move if it was not for queen a4 check, grabbing the horse. Note that your pawn on b4 is tactically protected because of this check, winning a piece as the knight cannot protect it. c4 releases the central tension too early. You will simply push your pawn to d4. Our central pawn chain looks somewhat intimidating. This explains why most players will take here. After taking back with the bishop, the plan is simple. You overprotect your e5 pawn with as many pieces as possible. For that matter, use the bishop, the queen, and even the rook. From there, you can consider chipping at black's center with c4 or going for a kingside attack. The strong e5 pawn is the main reason why this configuration is so dominant for you. It's clearly the MVP in most of these positions. A black can develop his queenside pieces starting with knight d7. Note that taking our b4 pawn is now a legitimate threat since the queen cannot help out this time. That's why you will take on c5 and build a strong pawn formation in the center with d4. Black can try queen a5, and you respond with bishop d2, lining up on black's queen. c4 rules out any tentative of unveiling a discovered attack on the queen. After a few more logical moves, you can choose from many maneuvers for this knight on b1. You can bring it to the b5 square via a3, or transfer it to the king side via c2 and e3. Meanwhile, I don't see many attractive places for black's pieces, especially the bishop on c8, which looks encaged behind his pawns. Queen d7 is another way of obstructing the problematic a4 e8 diagonal, thus threatening our b4 pawn. Again, we take on c5 and conquer the center with the move d4. After that, we bring our bishop to d3. From there, we move our b1 knight using one of these two standard maneuvers. Let's see how to proceed when black takes the b-pawn. The side pawn on a3 doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter!
So we get rid of it. We want the c-pawn far from the center of the board in order to build a dominant center with our c and d pawns. We can take back on a3 whenever we want. Right now, we want to focus on our development. You will play bishop d3 as usual with the same plans as before. You will take the a3 pawn using preferably the knight, and after try to reach the advanced d6 post or the e3 square. A quick note, in this kind of positions, whenever black moves his knight out to g6, it's often a good idea to harass it with the moves h4 and h5. By now, you should be able to crush the French like no problem. Let's move to the Sicilian. Whether your opponent goes with knight c6, d6 or e6, you will always go for the same gambit with b4. It's the theme of the day after all. Let's start with the d6 move. After deflecting the c-pawn from the center, you will use the space left behind to move your d-pawn forward. It's the same scenario as in the French. Give your a-pawn and enjoy a great center. Your central dominance compensates for the slight material deficit. The move e6 will magically transpose back to the French defense. Let's see how the magic operates. After black takes, you will always sacrifice the a3 pawn. And following d4, d5, and some natural moves, we arrive at a position we already saw minutes earlier. After knight c6 and b4, black has to choose how he wants to grab our pawn. If he takes with the pawn, you build your usual pawn center with tempo. You will follow up with bishop d3 and castles with familiar play. Taking with the pawn can again bring to French territories if black goes for e6 followed by d5. If instead black goes for d5 at once, we will go for an extraordinary trappy line. Your opponents will most likely fall for it. You attack the black queen with c4. Retreating feels shameful, so your opponent will probably take on c3. You bring your knight out with tempo on black's queen. The queen will slide to a5, attacking your knight. Here comes the shocker rook b1. Yes, giving a knight for apparently no reason. But we've a truly deep plan behind. We parry the check with bishop d2. Queen a3 is the only move. Then we'd attack black's knight with d5. If black dares to touch this knight, the game is over, believe it or not. Knight b8 is answered by queen c2 threatening the black bishop with mate. When black parries it with bishop d7, you play the deflecting move bishop b5, maintaining the checkmate threat on c8 due to the pinned bishop on d7. A black has to make some room for his king, but we anyway play queen c8 check and take the pawn on b7 with a rook in the pocket on the next turn. Knight d8 also loses by force. You play bishop b5 check and bishop b4, attacking the queen. The queen is forced to take the a2 pawn, but after a sequence of forced moves, the queen will be eventually lost. Lastly, after knight a5, we play bishop b5 check and take the bishop. We defend a2 with the queen, while threatening to trap black's queen with bishop b4. The computer doesn't see a valid reason to continue the game, so why should your weak opponents? Just look how vulnerable the black king feels in the center. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more chess videos and have an incredible rest of your day.